My wife became a doctor and celebrated by filing for divorce the same day. I signed without argument and vanished completely. 8 years. That's how long I spent building someone else's dream while mine collected dust in the corner. 8 years of working double shifts to pay for her medical school tuition. 8 years of frozen dinners because she was always studying. 8 years of canceled vacations because she needed to focus on exams. 8 years of being told, once I graduate, everything will be different. The graduation ceremony was on a Thursday in May. I requested the day off work specifically to be there, even bought a new shirt for the occasion. After all, this was supposed to be our moment, our achievement, our future finally beginning. I sat in that packed auditorium watching her walk across the stage. When they called her name, I stood up and clapped harder than anyone else. 8 years of sacrifice was finally paying off. At least, that's what I thought. The ceremony ended around noon. Families were taking pictures, celebrating, making dinner plans. I waited by the car while she posed with her classmates, that diploma clutched in her hands like a golden ticket. When she finally walked over to me, I expected a hug, a kiss, maybe even a thank you. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Divorce papers," she said, like she was discussing the weather. I already signed my part. I stared at the envelope, then at her. She wasn't joking. There was no emotion in her eyes, no hesitation in her voice. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planned. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious. Look, I don't need you anymore. I have my degree. I have job offers. I have a future. You were helpful during school, but that chapter of my life is over." Helpful. 8 years of my life reduced to one word. Helpful. So what was I then? Some kind of financial aid program. She shrugged. "You knew what you were signing up for." I was clear about my priorities from day one. Medical school came first. Now I'm a doctor, and I want to start fresh. No dead weight. Dead weight. That's what 8 years of marriage meant to her. Dead weight. Her colleagues were starting to gather around us, probably wondering what the intense conversation was about. Some of them I recognized from the few social events I'd attended over the years. They all knew I was the husband who worked overtime to pay their friends' tuition. I opened the envelope and skimmed through the papers. Everything was already filled out. She'd divided our assets, claimed the car she wanted, even listed the apartment as solely hers since she'd be making doctor money soon. I was getting the bare minimum the law required. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" "I'm not stupid. I know what I want." I looked around at her classmates watching us, at the families celebrating nearby, at the woman I'd spent 8 years supporting who was now discarding me like a used textbook. Then I did something that surprised everyone, especially her. I pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket and signed every page without reading the rest. Right there in the parking lot, in front of her medical school colleagues, I ended our marriage with the same casualness she'd started this conversation. "There," I said, handing the papers back to her. "Congratulations on your graduation. And your divorce." Her mouth dropped open. She'd expected drama, begging, maybe even anger. What she got was efficient cooperation. "Wait, that's it. You're not going to fight this? Try to talk me out of it." Why would I fight for someone who just called me dead weight? I turned and walked away from the car, leaving her standing there with her diploma in one hand and our signed divorce papers in the other. Behind me, I could hear her colleagues starting to whisper among themselves. I didn't look back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I simply walked out of that parking lot and out of her life completely. The last thing I heard as I turned the corner was one of her classmates asking, "Who was that guy? And why did he just walk away from his own car?" I kept walking. She wanted to start fresh with no dead weight. Perfect. She was about to find out exactly what dead weight I'd been carrying all these years. 3 days after the graduation parking lot incident, I was gone. Not just from the apartment, but from the entire state. While she was probably expecting me to come crawling back with apologies and flowers, I was executing the most thorough disappearing act of my life. The beauty of being married to someone who never paid attention to finances was that she had no idea what I actually controlled. She thought she was getting the apartment because she'd be making doctor money. What she didn't know was that I'd been paying the rent from my personal account for the past 2 years, not our joint account. The lease was in my name only. I spent those 3 days liquidating everything that mattered, closed our joint accounts, and moved my half to a new bank she'd never heard of, canceled the utilities that were in my name, transferred my phone number to a new carrier. Even canceled the Netflix subscription she loved so much. By Saturday morning, I was loading my pickup truck with everything I actually cared about. Clothes, tools, my grandmother's china that she never appreciated anyway, and my collection of vintage records she always complained were taking up space. Portland, Oregon became my destination, not because I had ties there, but because I didn't. Clean slate in a city where nobody knew my story and nobody would think to look for me. The apartment I found was nothing fancy. One bedroom, 15 minutes from downtown, with a view of a parking lot instead of the city skyline she always talked about wanting. But it was mine. Completely, legally, financially mine. Landing a job took less than a week. Construction management for a mid-sized company that specialized in commercial buildings. The pay was solid, the hours were reasonable, and nobody asked about my personal life. Perfect. Meanwhile, back in our old city, she was discovering the reality of her fresh start. The first sign of trouble came when she tried to pay the rent. Turns out the landlord doesn't accept "I'm going to be a doctor" as legal tender. When the electricity got shut off 3 days later, followed by the internet, she finally understood that I hadn't been dead weight after all. I'd been the foundation. Her text messages started the first week. "We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just disappear." I watched them come in and deleted each one without reading past the preview. The calls began during week 2. 27 calls in one day. I let every single one go to voicemail, then deleted the voicemails without listening. If she had something important to say, she could put it in writing through her lawyer. By week 3, she was reaching out to my former coworkers, trying to get my new contact information. My old supervisor called to give me a heads up that some frantic woman claiming to be your wife had shown up at the office. I thanked him for the warning and told him I had no wife. Month 2 brought the real panic. She'd apparently tried to use me as a reference for an apartment application, only to discover my old phone number was disconnected. She contacted my sister, my parents, even my old college roommate. Each of them got the same message from me. I don't know anyone by that name. The most desperate move came during month 3. She somehow tracked down my new employer and called the main office, claiming there was a family emergency. My boss took the message and passed it along. I told him the truth. I had no family emergency because I had no family by that name. He understood completely and quietly flagged her number in their system. What she didn't realize was how much I was enjoying my new life. Portland suited me. The coffee was better, the people minded their own business, and nobody expected me to sacrifice my present for someone else's future. I joined a hiking group that met every weekend. Started taking evening classes in project management. Even began dating again, though nothing serious. Just rediscovering what it felt like to have conversations that didn't revolve around medical school stress and study schedules. The woman I met at a bookstore coffee shop was everything my ex-wife wasn't. She had her own career as a graphic designer, paid for her own meals, and actually seemed interested in my thoughts and opinions. When I told her I'd recently gotten divorced, she simply nodded and said, "Good for you for knowing when to walk away." No drama, no analysis of what went wrong, no suggestions for counseling or second chances, just acceptance that sometimes marriages end and moving forward is the healthiest option. By month 6, I'd stopped checking if my ex-wife had tried to contact me. I'd built a routine that had nothing to do with her schedule, preferences, or needs. Wake up at 6, coffee while reading the news, work from 7 to 4, gym or hiking after work, dinner with friends, or a quiet evening at home reading. Simple, peaceful, mine. The irony wasn't lost on me that while she was probably telling her colleagues about her fresh start as a newly single doctor, I was the one actually living fresh. No dead weight dragging me down, no one treating my contributions as temporary conveniences. She wanted to start over with a clean slate. I'd given her exactly that, plus something she hadn't expected, a completely empty slate where I used to be. 3 years into my Portland life, I was living better than I had in the entire 8 years of marriage. What I didn't know was that 3 years into her medical career, my ex-wife was discovering that reality had a sense of humor. I found this out later, through a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist sharing the gossip. Apparently, her fresh start hadn't gone according to plan. Turns out, being a brand new doctor isn't the instant wealth and prestige she'd imagined. Her starting salary as a resident was barely more than what I'd been making in construction, except now she had 6-figure student loan debt hanging over her head. Debt that used to be our problem when she needed my signature for the consolidation loans. The apartment she'd claimed in the divorce papers became a financial nightmare within 6 months. Without my income supporting the rent, utilities, and groceries, she burned through her savings before her first residency paycheck arrived. She ended up taking on 2 roommates just to make ends meet. Sharing the space, she'd been so excited to have all to herself. Those roommates, according to my source, were not impressed when they discovered she'd divorced her husband immediately after graduation, especially when they realized they were essentially subsidizing the lifestyle she'd planned to fund with Dr. Money that wasn't materializing as quickly as expected. Her work schedule was brutal. 80-hour weeks, overnight shifts, being on call during weekends. She'd planned to enjoy her newfound freedom. The social life she'd envisioned as a successful single doctor turned into catching naps between shifts and living on hospital cafeteria food and energy drinks. Meanwhile, I was thriving. The construction company I joined had promoted me to senior project manager. My salary had increased significantly, and I was handling some of the biggest commercial projects in Portland. I'd bought a small house with a decent yard, nothing fancy but completely mine. No shared mortgage payments, no joint financial planning, no asking permission for purchases. The hiking group had become a core part of my social circle. Every weekend, rain or shine, we explored different trails around Oregon and Washington. I was in the best shape of my life, had a solid group of friends, and felt genuinely content for the first time in years. The graphic designer I'd met at the bookstore had become something more serious. We'd been together for over a year, taking things slow and steady. She appreciated that I wasn't rushing into anything, given my recent divorce. What she didn't know was how refreshing it was to be with someone who contributed equally to our relationship instead of treating me like a financial support system. She had her own house, her own car, her own savings account. When we went out to dinner, she insisted on splitting the bill. When I cooked dinner at my place, she brought wine and dessert. When she cooked at hers, I handled cleanup and brought flowers. Everything felt balanced and reciprocal. But back to my ex-wife's situation. The breaking point for her, apparently, came during her second year of residency. She'd been working a particularly brutal schedule when her car broke down. Major engine problems that would cost more to fix than the car was worth. In the past, this would have been my problem to solve. I'd have figured out the financing, negotiated with mechanics, maybe even borrowed money from family if necessary. Now, she was facing it alone with maxed out credit cards and no savings. She ended up taking public transportation for 3 months before finally qualifying for a loan on a used car with payments that ate up a significant chunk of her already tight budget. The whole experience apparently triggered some kind of awakening about what she'd lost when she discarded her dead weight. That's when the real searching began. First, she tried social media, but I deleted all my old accounts and never created new ones under my real name. Then she contacted every mutual friend we'd had, but most of them had chosen sides after the divorce, and her side wasn't winning. She hired a private investigator after 2 years of failed searching. Even paid him a $1,000 retainer from money she couldn't afford to spend. He found old addresses, previous employers, even tracked down family members who wouldn't tell him anything useful. The breakthrough came when she abused her access to medical databases during her 3rd year of residency. She'd somehow gotten the idea to search hospital employment records across multiple states, looking for my name in construction-related job descriptions. Apparently, she figured I'd eventually need medical care somewhere, and if I'd kept the same type of job, she might find a trail. It was a long shot that shouldn't have worked, but it did. A routine physical I'd gotten through my employer's health insurance program had created a record that showed up in her search. The hospital was in Portland, Oregon, and the employment listed was with a major construction firm. She'd found me. After 3 years of searching, she finally had a general location and enough information to track me down completely. What she didn't know was that the man she was looking for had evolved far beyond the person she discarded in that graduation parking lot. I wasn't the same guy who'd worked double shifts to pay her tuition. I wasn't the same man who'd accepted being called dead weight and helpful. I was someone who'd built an entirely new life without her in it. Someone who'd proven that her assessment of my value had been completely wrong. Someone who'd moved on so completely that her name rarely crossed my mind anymore. She was about to discover that when you throw away something valuable, you don't get to decide 3 years later that you want it back. The call started on a Tuesday morning in March. My phone showed 17 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then the texts began flooding in. I know you're getting these messages. We need to talk about what happened. I made a mistake and I want to fix it. Please just call me back. I deleted each message without reading past the preview. After 3 years of complete silence, I wasn't interested in whatever crisis had suddenly made her remember my existence. The calls continued for 2 weeks. Different numbers now, probably borrowed phones from colleagues or friends. I blocked each one as soon as I identified the pattern. 17 calls Tuesday, 23 on Wednesday, 31 on Thursday. She was escalating, getting more desperate with each day of silence. Then she got creative. My work phone rang on a Friday afternoon. I was on-site reviewing blueprints when the receptionist from our main office called. Hey, there's a woman here claiming to be your wife. Says there's a family emergency and she needs to speak with you immediately. What does she look like? The receptionist described her perfectly. My ex-wife had somehow found my employer and driven to Portland. She was sitting in our lobby right now, probably spinning some story about urgent medical news or family crisis. Tell her you couldn't reach me and that I'm out of state on a project for the next 2 weeks. Take her contact information and let her know someone will call her back. Got it. Should I actually call her back? No. An hour later, my supervisor called with an update. She'd waited in the lobby for 3 hours, asking repeatedly if I'd returned any calls or shown up at different job sites. When it became clear I wasn't coming, she'd left her number and a handwritten note. What did the note say? Something about how you two need to discuss your future together. She seemed pretty upset when she realized we weren't going to help her track you down. Thanks for handling that professionally. No problem. We get crazy ex-wives sometimes. I'll flag her information in case she comes back. She didn't come back to the office, but she found other ways to make her presence known. She'd apparently spent the weekend driving around Portland, looking for my truck in apartment complexes and restaurant parking lots. One of my hiking buddies called Sunday evening to let me know a woman matching her description had approached him at a coffee shop, claiming to be looking for her estranged husband, and showing him a photo on her phone. Dude, I didn't tell her anything, but she seemed really determined. Said she'd been searching for 3 years. Thanks for the heads up. If she approaches you again, you've never heard of me. Copy that. Monday brought a new strategy. She'd figured out that I lived somewhere in Portland and decided to blanket the city with her search. She posted on neighborhood Facebook groups, Nextdoor apps, even Craigslist missed connections, all with the same basic message. Looking for my husband. We lost touch after my medical residency. Please help me reconnect. My graphic designer girlfriend showed me one of the posts Tuesday evening. We were cooking dinner at my place when she pulled up Facebook on her phone. This is weird. Some woman is posting in all the Portland groups looking for her husband. She's using a photo that looks like it was taken years ago, and the whole thing sounds desperate. I looked at the post. Sure enough, it was a photo of me from our marriage, probably taken during some dinner out that I'd forgotten about. The caption read like something from a missed connections ad, full of regret and promises to make things right. Sounds like someone who doesn't understand that some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. My girlfriend nodded. The comments are pretty brutal. Most people are telling her that if her husband wanted to be found, he wouldn't have disappeared so thoroughly. She was right. The comment section was filled with people pointing out the obvious. Men don't vanish completely unless they have very good reasons. Several women had shared their own stories about ex-husbands who'd gone no contact, and the consensus was clear. This level of avoidance meant serious damage had been done. Wednesday brought the most desperate move yet. She somehow got my address. I came home from work to find her sitting in her car outside my house. She'd been there long enough to attract attention from neighbors, because Mrs. Chun from across the street flagged me down as I pulled into my driveway. That woman has been parked there since noon, asking everyone who walks by if they know you. I told her I've never seen you before in my life. Thanks. If she approaches you again, please feel free to call the police about suspicious behavior. I parked in my garage and entered through the side door, avoiding any contact with her car. She knew I was home now, which meant the real confrontation was coming. The doorbell started ringing around 7 p.m. Continuous, aggressive rings that went on for 2 minutes at a time. Then knocking. Then more ringing. I ignored all of it, continuing with my normal evening routine of dinner and reading. Around 9 p.m., she started yelling through the door. I know you're in there. I saw your truck in the garage. We need to talk about this like adults. I drove 16 hours to get here. I'm not leaving until you at least listen to me. The neighbors were definitely getting a show. I could see porch lights coming on up and down the street, people probably wondering what kind of drama was playing out on their usually quiet block. I called the police non-emergency line. I'd like to report someone trespassing and disturbing the peace at my residence. It's my ex-wife, and she's been here for several hours refusing to leave. The officer who arrived 20 minutes later was professional and efficient. I watched through the window as he spoke with her for about 10 minutes. She was animated, gesturing toward my house, probably explaining her 3-year search and her desperate need to reconnect. He knocked on my door, and I answered. Sir, the woman claims to be your ex-wife and says she needs to discuss important matters with you. Are you willing to speak with her? No. We've been divorced for 3 years, and I have no interest in any communication with her. I'd like her removed from my property. Understood. I'll escort her off the premises and explain that she needs to leave you alone. Through the window, I watched him walk back to her car and have another conversation. This one was clearly more firm, because she got in her car and drove away without looking back at my house. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number 5 minutes later. The police can't stop me from loving you. I'll wait as long as it takes. I screenshotted the message and added it to the file I'd started keeping. If this escalated further, I wanted documentation of everything. 3 years of silence, followed by 2 weeks of desperation. She found me, but she was about to learn that finding someone and reconnecting with them are 2 completely different things. She cornered me at Home Depot on a Saturday afternoon. I was loading lumber into my truck for a deck project when I heard her voice behind me. Please don't walk away. Just give me 5 minutes. I turned around to find her standing 10 feet away, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She was thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes and that frantic energy of someone running on pure desperation. 5 minutes for what? To apologize. To explain. To ask for another chance. I closed the tailgate and faced her completely. You had 8 years of chances. You used them all up in a parking lot 3 years ago. I was stressed. Medical school was overwhelming, and I said things I didn't mean. I've regretted it every single day since. Which part do you regret? Calling me dead weight, or discovering that dead weight was actually keeping your life afloat? She flinched at that. I never should have said those things. I was scared about starting my career, and I thought I needed to be completely independent to prove I could make it as a doctor. How's that working out for you? Her jaw tightened. It's been harder than I expected. The hours, the money, everything. I realize now that I gave up the best thing in my life for a career that's not what I thought it would be. I leaned against my truck and crossed my arms. So let me understand this. When you thought you were going to be wealthy and successful, you threw me away like garbage. Now that reality hit and you're struggling, suddenly I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. That's not how it was. That's exactly how it was. You said it yourself. You didn't need me anymore. I was helpful during school, but that chapter was over. Remember? She looked down at the ground. I was wrong. Yes, you were. About a lot of things. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We had something good before medical school took over everything. We can have that again. I almost laughed. We never had anything good. I had 8 years of being your personal support system while you chased your dream. You had 8 years of free financial and emotional labor while you figured out your career. Those are 2 completely different relationships. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let me tell you what's been fair. You got exactly what you asked for. A fresh start with no dead weight. I got exactly what I deserved after 8 years of being taken for granted. A life where I'm valued. I value you. I always valued you. You valued what I provided. There's a difference. She stepped closer, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. I love you. I've always loved you. I just got confused about priorities. No, you didn't get confused. You got honest. For the first time in 8 years, you told me exactly what you thought of me and our marriage. The only thing that's changed is your circumstances. People change. I've changed. Have you? Or are you just desperate because being an adult is harder than you expected? She was quiet for a long moment, then tried a different approach. What can I do to prove that I'm different now? Nothing, because I'm different now too. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not the same man you discarded 3 years ago. That guy who worked double shifts to pay your bills? He's gone. The guy who accepted being called dead weight and helpful? He doesn't exist anymore. You're talking to someone completely different. I don't believe that. People don't just become different people. Sure they do, especially when they're forced to rebuild their entire life from scratch. Want to know what I've learned in the past 3 years? She nodded. I learned that I'm actually pretty good company when I'm not constantly worried about someone else's stress levels. I learned that I have interests and hobbies that don't revolve around medical school schedules. I learned what it feels like to have conversations that don't end with someone complaining about professors or rotations or board exams. Her face was getting redder with each point I made. I learned that when you date someone who has their own career and their own money, relationships become partnerships instead of charity cases. I learned that mutual respect is actually possible when both people contribute equally. You're dating someone? I'm engaged to someone. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually stepped backward and put her hand to her chest. Engaged? 3 months ago. We're getting married in September. But we're still married. No, we're not. You divorced me, remember? Signed papers and everything. Very efficiently handled, actually. I mean, we could still, if you wanted to try again. I don't want to try again. I want to continue moving forward with someone who chose me when she had options, not someone who only wants me back because her other options didn't work out. She was crying openly now. This isn't how this was supposed to go. How was it supposed to go? You were supposed to show up after 3 years, apologize for treating me like garbage, and I was supposed to gratefully accept you back into my life. Yes. No. I don't know. I just thought, if I could find you and explain. You thought I'd be sitting around waiting for you to realize your mistake. Like I was just on pause until you decided you needed me again. She didn't answer, but the expression on her face confirmed exactly what she'd been thinking. Here's the thing you never understood about me. I don't wait around for people to figure out my value. When you threw me away, I took you at your word and moved on completely. The man you're looking for remarried someone who appreciates him from day one. I could appreciate you now. Too late. Someone else already does. I opened my truck door and got in. She stood there watching me, probably hoping I'd change my mind or offer some kind of hope for reconciliation. Instead, I rolled down the window and gave her one final piece of advice. Next time you find something valuable, try not to throw it away just because you think you've found something better. Most people only get one chance to make that mistake. I drove away, leaving her standing in the Home Depot parking lot with the same expression she'd had 3 years ago when I'd signed the divorce papers. The difference was, this time she understood exactly what she'd lost. 2 weeks after the Home Depot encounter, she made one last desperate move. She showed up at my workplace again, this time with a different story. She told our receptionist she was a doctor with urgent medical information about my health that required immediate discussion. My supervisor called me into his office. Your ex is back. This time she's claiming medical emergency. Should I call security? Actually, let me handle this one personally. I walked to the lobby where she was waiting, still in scrubs from what was probably a night shift. She looked even worse than before, like she'd been surviving on nothing but coffee and false hope. Medical emergency? I asked. I needed to see you. And you thought impersonating a doctor with urgent health information was the appropriate way to do that. I am a doctor. You're also a liar. There's no medical emergency, is there? She shook her head, tears starting again. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you 2 things, and then this ends forever. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. First, this is a restraining order. Any further contact from you, direct or indirect, becomes a legal matter. That includes showing up at my work, my home, contacting my friends, or creating fake emergencies. Her hands were shaking as she took the envelope. Second, this is for you. I handed her a wedding invitation. My name and my fiancé's name were printed in elegant script, along with the September date and Portland venue information. I want you to understand that I'm not just moving on from you. I've already moved on. Completely. The life I'm building has nothing to do with the life we had together. She stared at the invitation like it might disappear if she blinked. My fiancé knows about you. She knows about our marriage, our divorce, and your recent attempts to reconnect. She's not threatened by you because she understands something you never did. What's that? That when someone chooses you every day, instead of just keeping you around until something better comes along, it creates a completely different kind of relationship. Security had arrived and was waiting nearby, probably called by the receptionist when she realized what was happening. These gentlemen are going to escort you to your car. If I see you again, if I hear from you again, if you contact anyone in my life again, The next conversation will be with my lawyer and the police. She was crying harder now, clutching the restraining order and wedding invitation. I know I made mistakes, but this feels cruel. Cruel would be leading you on, letting you think there was hope, or pretending that 3 years of rebuilding my life could be erased with an apology. This is honest. I love you. I know you think you do, but love isn't something you discover when you're desperate. Love is what you nurture when you have choices. Security stepped forward, and she let them guide her toward the exit. At the door, she turned back one last time. Will you ever forgive me? I already have. That's why I was able to move on completely. She left, and I never saw her again. 6 months later, I married my fiancée in a small ceremony surrounded by people who'd watched me build a new life from nothing. During my vows, I promised to choose her every day, not just when convenient. She promised the same thing back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well that the people who discarded you realize they gave away something irreplaceable. My ex-wife wanted a fresh start with no dead weight. I gave her exactly that, and built something better than anything we'd ever had together. She got what she asked for. I got what I deserved. We were both finally free.